Thikai GG, Main Bana Diahu, Nichak Ko Emil Cioran, Wali Script Ka Full YouTube Package Mil Raha High. 2,500 word script, 2 parts. Paragraph only. Human cinematic narration. 5 high CTR titles. SEO description. Hashtags. Keywords. 5 thumbnail texts. 15 VO3 prompts. 8 sec shots. Script. 2,500 words. Part 1 approximately equals 1250 words. It always begins the same way, with a quiet moment that feels too honest. You're staring at the ceiling at 3:17 a.m. The room is still. The world is asleep. And for the first time all day, there is no noise left to protect you from your own mind. That is when the question appears, not as a thought, but as a presence. What is the point of all this? Why do we wake up, struggle, love, lose, repeat, and then disappear as if none of it ever mattered? Most people run from this question. They drown it in productivity, religion, entertainment, or optimism. But Emil Cioran did something almost inhuman. He invited the question in, sat it down at the table, and wrote with it until Dawn.Cioran was born into a century that was falling apart. The old world was dying, but the new one hadn't been born yet. Traditional religion was losing its grip, and modern philosophy was rising like a cold sun. Existentialism, pessimism, and the new secular loneliness were spreading across Europe. In that fractured landscape, Cioran did not try to repair meaning. He did not try to build a new belief system. He simply described the collapse. And he did it with a style so dark, so lyrical.
The quarterly reports show a significant increase in client engagement. That's excellent news, aligns perfectly with our projections for this fiscal period. The quarterly reports show a significant increase in client engagement. That's excellent news, aligns perfectly with our projections for this fiscal period.
He didn't construct grand systems like Hegel. He didn't offer salvation like religion. Cioran wrote like a man leaving messages from the edge of a cliff. His sentences weren't stepping stones toward a conclusion. They were bruises. His work is not a map out of the darkness. It is a candle inside it. He grew up in Romania, a country shaped by history's harsh hands. And from early on, he became a reader, not out of curiosity alone, but out of desperation. Books were not entertainment for him. They were escape routes. They were evidence that someone else had already stared into the abyss and survived long enough to write about it. He studied literature and philosophy at the University of Bucharest, absorbing the giants, Nietzsche's thunder, Schopenhauer's bleak clarity, Kant's cold precision, and the strange spiritual pessimism of thinkers like Lev Shestov. But even then, it wasn't scholarship that defined him. It was suffering. Cioran's real education was insomnia. For years, sleep abandoned him. Night after night, he lay awake while the world rested, and the mind did what it always does when it has too much time. It dissects. It doubts. It magnifies. Insomnia doesn't just keep you awake. It strips away your illusions. It forces you to see your thoughts in their rawest form. And for Cioran, this became the furnace in which his entire philosophy was forged. He later admitted that he could not write unless he was in the grip of depression, and that before writing,
Flight 372 to London is now boarding at Gate C4.
His first major book,
Please have your boarding pass and identification
when he was
ready.
only 23. Most people at that age
Flight
are still trying to figure out who they
372 to
are.
London is
Cioran
now
wrote as if he
boarding
had
at
already
Gate
lived 10
C4.
lifetimes and buried
Please
them
have
all.
your boarding
The book was
pass and
controversial,
identification
praised
ready.
and feared at the same time, because it did something people rarely forgive. It told the truth without comforting the reader afterward. It did not soften despair. It made it articulate. And here's the strange part. Even though Cioran wrote about futility, failure, decay, and death, writing itself became his survival mechanism. He described it almost like a delayed suicide, as if each book bought him another year of existence. This is one of the deepest paradoxes of his life. He insisted life had no ultimate meaning, yet he continued to create. He declared everything useless, yet his words continue to rescue people from the edge. It's as if the act of expressing meaninglessness becomes its own kind of meaning. Even nihilism cannot escape the human need to shape experience into language. Eventually, Cioran left Romania and settled in Paris. The move wasn't just geographical. It was symbolic. He stepped out of his homeland and into the intellectual capital of Europe, where philosophy wasn't just an academic subject, but a lifestyle. He lived there for most of his life, writing in both Romanian and French, keeping the same sharp intensity and dark elegance. His reputation grew. Writers admired him. Philosophers respected him. Readers clung to him like a secret. And yet, he lived like a man who refused success. He avoided prizes. He rejected fame. He lived quietly, modestly, almost as if he didn't want the world to notice that he was still alive. There is something profoundly consistent about that. A man who wrote about the absurdity of existence, refused to participate in the absurd theater of achievement. But his philosophy wasn't just pessimism. It was something more dangerous. Because Cioran did not simply say life is meaningless. He suggested that the very attempt to force meaning onto life might be the source of our suffering. He saw the human mind as a machine, cursed with the need to justify itself. We cannot simply exist.
In our pastry section
we must
today,
explain why we exist. And in that hunger for explanation, we create religions, ideologies, and dreams that eventually collapse under their own weight. For Cioran, death is not just an ending. It is the shadow behind every thought. It is the silent opponent that makes all projects temporary, all victories fragile, all ambitions laughable. But his most brutal insight is that death isn't the deepest tragedy. Birth is, because once you are born, death becomes inevitable. Once consciousness exists, fear exists. Once you are alive, you are condemned to the knowledge that you will not remain
going to talk
This is why
about
Cioran's
the
writing feels like it is always standing on the edge of a grave, not because he enjoyed suffering, but because he refused to lie about it. He refused the modern addiction to positivity. He refused the idea that happiness is the goal. Instead, he turned suffering into a lens. If you can see life clearly, he believed, you stop expecting it to be fair, meaningful, or kind. And that clarity, strangely, can feel like relief. There is a line in Cioran's worldview that most people miss. He was not simply rejecting life. In a twisted way, he was defending it. Because to speak about life with such brutal honesty is to treat it as worthy of attention. To refuse comforting lies is a form of respect. He once said that everything that is formulated becomes more tolerable. In other words, the act of naming the darkness reduces its power. Language doesn't cure despair, but it makes it survivable. This is why people return to him. Not because he makes them feel better, but because he makes them feel less alone. He gives a voice to thoughts most people are afraid to admit they have. The fear that everything is pointless. The suspicion that optimism is a performance. The exhaustion of pretending to be fine. Cioran did not offer salvation. He offered companionship in the abyss. And sometimes that is the only thing a human being truly needs. Asterisk. There is a reason Cioran is often called a nihilist. And there is also a reason that label feels incomplete. True nihilism claims that nothing matters. But Cioran wrote as if something mattered deeply, the experience of being human in a universe that does not explain itself. His work is not a cold denial of meaning. It is a feverish obsession with the fact that meaning is impossible to secure. This is what makes him different from ordinary pessimists. Ordinary pessimism is a conclusion. Cioran's pessimism is a method. He uses it like a blade to cut through illusions. He doesn't merely say, hope is false. He shows how hope becomes a trap. He doesn't simply say, life is absurd. He demonstrates how every human attempt to escape absurdity creates new forms of suffering. And yet, beneath the darkness, there is a strange humor, a brutal irony, a tone that suggests Cioran was not only horrified by existence, but also amused by it. Because once you accept the absurdity fully, you begin to see how ridiculous the entire performance is. People building careers as if death isn't waiting. People arguing as if truth will survive time. People collecting wealth as if the grave accepts currency. Cioran's work repeatedly returns to failure, not as an occasional event, but as the default destiny of all human endeavor. Every project collapses. Every empire fades. Every love story ends. Every body decays. For him, the tragedy isn't that we fail. The tragedy is that we keep pretending we won't. But here is where the philosophy turns into something almost liberating. Because if failure is inevitable, then the fear of failure loses its power. If decay is certain, then perfection becomes meaningless. If the universe is indifferent, then your shame becomes irrelevant. Cioran's darkness is not designed to destroy you. It is designed to strip you of the lies that are destroying you. This is why he speaks of embracing the absurd, not in a cheerful, motivational way, but in a defiant one. If life has no ultimate purpose, then the only honest response is to stop demanding purpose from it, to live without the constant pressure to justify your existence, to stop begging the universe for meaning, and instead accept the raw fact of being alive. Ci. Oran once described living as an illusion that simulates life. And yet he lived. That is the paradox. He did not kill himself. He kept writing. He kept walking the streets of Paris. He kept existing long enough to become one of the greatest voices of despair.